Welcome back to Rocket Talks. Today is a very special one. I'm really thrilled to be joined by Zach. Yeah, he is truly a visionary educator. I've heard so much of him, and then I was really blessed because I was able to do a course with him. And yeah, it was so inspiring. Being able to connect with different people, but really listening to your experience. So that was incredible, really inspired me. So I was really looking forward to this conversation. But yeah, you've done everything: curriculum design. You've been obviously a teacher as well, co-founder of the Biophilic Education Alliance, the Vinci Life Skill Teacher Gamer, which we're going to have to talk more about and really unpick and understand what's that about. You've spent over a decade developing creative learning environments, really looking and unpicking what different approaches to teaching and learning are. You even led a school called the Empathy Middle School, integrating role-playing games, project-based learning, which I personally love, and all things about social emotional learning too. So thank you so much for joining us today. I would love to start talking a little bit about the personal journey, because I think that really gives us, a little bit of information on why you're here now and what you are doing. So it will be really nice to know a little bit about, what really sparked your journey, what really got you into looking at different alternative ways to teaching and learning. Was that really a moment where you questioned conventional schooling and you thought, that there has to be another way?
Yeah, I'm thinking about my response and thinking, where do I start? But I think it starts as a student. I think it starts when I was growing up and just looking out the window of a classroom that was not engaging me, or a teacher that I didn't feel like was really seeing me or respecting me or whatever it was. And that could have been a little bit of teenager on my part, but it was also a lot, of the engagement initiative on their part. And so I would be looking out the window and daydreaming, thinking, can't we be doing something different? Can't like is this really how it is? I think I was questioning things from an early age, and maybe a bit too much. I mean, maybe I was just struggling with school, and ultimately, how does this work, and what is this system, and why am I here? And what did really spark everything eventually, like full kind of circle, was being given a number of students to work with who were kind of the trouble students, right? And I immediately related to them as a teacher. And then the administration saying, can you do something with these people? And I was like, yeah, of course. Like I would. I have already been on a journey to do something different with kids, and I said, well, what do you want me to do? And I said, we don't care, and just something. And I said, well, can I? And it just really came intuitively, and it was the first, one of the early times where I said, well, can I teach them Dungeons and Dragons? And they said, we just don't care. Like, just occupy them, and that was where I was like, I had been doing it a little bit before, and I had been starting to write out a curriculum, and I thought, whoa, this is really an interesting opportunity to just take already a kind of a marginalized group, or a group that was considered, troublesome or difficult. And now you would see a big difference. Like, if something could happen that made them engaged and happy and become, interested learners, we would see, a direct result and a consequence through the teaching. And I had already had some success with using mindfulness as well in school. So anyway, it made me jump back to when I was that kid. And I was thinking, on the weekends, I play Dungeons and Dragons and a bunch of other role-playing games. And I'm so engaged. I'm engaged for 8, 12 hours. Like, we can't sleep, and we get up the next morning, we just want to play again. And, how is it that there's something so engaging? And then I go to school and I become so disengaged and so disconnected, and it's not authentic, and it's not validating who I am, and it's not connecting with me. And so all of the work on becoming a kind of a person in the world, and going through, like, basically project-based learning and social emotional learning, was all happening on the weekend. and everything that was in school was just developing my intellect and suppressing my emotions. Just like, don't get emotional about this, just do the work.
Mm.
And so that whole experience, I think, it's a little bit like nonlinear. Like everything was sort of connecting back to and sort of even resolving some of my thoughts. But so that was kind of there's been some of these moments, and I think we all have those in our profession, whatever your profession, where you just have certain moments that really trigger your excitement. Another one was I mean, so another thing was that I was a music producer in a
Ah.
past life, but working in the studio and working as a studio executive, or working in the music industry, and traveling around and doing conferences and whatever all that is problematic when you're trying to raise a family. And I had a new kind of family starting, and so it was like, how can I stay with my family and live a life with my family? And in my daily meditation, which I had been doing already for about 5 years when we had our first son, I got this kind of little intuition bubble that said teacher. And it was not what, it was a little bit like in the hero's journey. It was like kind of a call to the adventure, and I was totally denying it. I was like, no, I didn't like school. I don't, I don't want to associate. And I was thinking, if there was pages, it would be, being a teacher would be on page 26 of whatever I thought I would be wanting to do. But I'm just sitting very gently in meditation. This thing came again and again, and then finally I said, "Whoa, okay, I have to kind of just follow that," and everything started to sort of fall into place. And so that was a really strange thing that really wasn't intellectualized. It really wasn't. It wasn't about a passion, because if anything, I was totally dispassionate about it to begin. But it really came from my body.
That's incredible. Yeah. It sort of resonates a little bit with my own personal journey, because I also never thought about going into teaching, because I did well at school, but the experience and the memories I had from school, they weren't that positive. It's definitely on page 30 of the things I was meant to be doing. And then I just
Right?
fell in love with teaching and children. So you never know, right? I love some of the words that you have mentioned again and again, is engagement. And I love how you were saying that project-based learning and that social emotional learning was happening the weekends, meaning anytime you were outside of school. Reminds me a little bit of Guy Claxton when he talks about learning power, and how, babies, children, right? Humans, we are born wired, ready to learn, ready to explore, ready to dream, to imagine, to fulfill, to be whoever we want to be. And yet, it tends to be that we all shut down usually 8 or 8:30 to 5. When you're at school, so many children all of a sudden disconnect, and they lose that learning power that usually they should naturally have. So I find that really interesting, because what I'm hearing is perhaps it wasn't the teacher, or perhaps it was the environment, it was what the schooling was, that it was obviously not giving you that experience and that opportunity to explore different things. And I love that you did that for those children, that because the lack of guidance, or because they didn't they didn't mind what you were doing with those children, that actually gave you that creative permission of thinking outside of the box. No one was expecting you to deliver something and to have a clear outcome. Therefore you had that freedom, that you thought, why not, let's just do into gaming, let's just explore something different and just make them engage, and they might learn the same, just different ways. So I love that thinking. I love how you came into a full circle, going back to school in the end. But then talking about project-based learning, social emotional learning, they're quite buzzwords, especially project-based learning, in the sense that you can see so many schools are trying now to have some elements of project-based learning. So actually it would be really nice to, from your own perspective, what is project-based learning? And if a school, whatever you want to call it, a learning hub or a learning space, if they're using project-based learning, what that looks like.
Okay. Well, project-based learning is trying to create an opportunity and space for people to explore putting something together and making something happen, or and developing an idea to find different points of curiosity, because in a large project, in general, you have many different departments. For example, if you want to put together a movie, I mean, we see at the end of a movie, we see the credits and all the people that it takes to put together the movie, right? But there's some people who are interested in lighting, and some people who are interested in sound, and some people who are interested in location, and some people in effects, and some people in the way the camera moves, and some people obviously acting. So there's all these different elements to that project. So regardless of what the project is, how can we find the little curious things that through different projects we can become a collaborator, and sometimes we need to lead in our individual department or all the departments, but a lot of times we need to follow, and we also need to compromise and empathize and understand and work together and collaborate to figure out how to make it happen. But there's also whatever happened in the past. So what's so interesting and what's so even academic about project-based learning is you have to look at, well, what came before us? What did people try? What already exists, and then, okay, we're going to try something. So we want to make it original, which is exciting. So that's the exciting part. And then there's the kind of like science behind things, or the technique behind things, or, what did people figure out how to be more efficient, or to save on budget, or to scale whatever they're doing. So, projects can be a wide range of things. And for example, when we developed with Rosina Dorelli the Da Vinci life skills, we were looking at 5 basic project pathways, right? So we looked at production, something that you would, when you're done with, you could show in the public. Food, which is obviously something that we could become more connected with, so that health and nutrition, and also the growing world around us is understood better, and also food security. Enterprise, which is to make something, especially in the community, that the community needs, and that could be the small community of just the learners, that could be the school, that could be something local, or it can be bigger, right? So that's like an enterprise. And then we have multiverse games, which is, again, a big exploration of really metaphor of the self and identity and identities, and trying things, and a lot of failing and collaboration and interest there. And then even where we begin, I'm kind of going to the beginning, which is personal exploration project. And that's just this opportunity for anybody who's working in project-based learning to work on something that they are interested in. And so we look at 4 different elements of that, which is like, what are you curious about? What do you want to make? What do you want to get better at? And what do you want to solve? And just opening those questions and creating this opportunity for choice is really about, again, coming back to this idea of like, where in the project do you fit? And also, maybe you can identify where you're actually very fragile or insecure. And also, when you become more confident with these life skills and with these collaboration skills, then you can, say, okay, I want to get better at this thing. I want to try something that's not necessarily in my comfort zone. And so it's really this opportunity to see how systems work. So project-based learning really is about systems thinking and about social emotional learning. And you just can't do a project, I mean, unless you do just something by yourself, which people do, but in general, you need help. And although, yes, you could just do everything through a computer and YouTube, it's so much more interesting and warm and alive when you meet with people, learn what they like to do, and see, how they do things and what you can learn from their experience.
I love that. That was really well explained. Because I love how actually you're saying, you can explore yourself as a personal level, but then also you are exploring every single layer, which you call it so well with this, it's the systems, because it's not just yourself, but it's like, how do I fit into this project? What am I good at? What are my strengths? But actually, where do I need support from others who might have those strengths, will have other people try already. So therefore I'm learning that, and then I'm being creative with my peers. So I can build on that and come up with new ideas or new ways to approach things. And perspective taking, again, is so important. If you work just on your own, there is no chance that you can see what else is happening. So that ability of wearing different lenses as you're approaching something, again, is so important. It's real work. That's what I really like. And I know there is also an area that you're really passionate about, which is authentic motivation. So I love how you've also are using those words when you talk about that sort of like personal project, because I feel it is often that when our children leave a school, they're at a loss, right? They don't really know what to do with themselves. Because if you spend 10 years with someone else telling you what to do, if you don't have that autonomy, as you were saying, if you don't have choice, therefore, you don't know what taking responsibility, what having a go, what taking risk. You don't know what that is like. You don't have that experience. And having that agency, that autonomy is so important for life, but then also compromise how you're going to negotiate with others and, what's at stake. So that's really interesting. I'd love to know a little bit more about, what's authentic motivation? How is it different of, why a child, when they're sitting in a conventional school, just to call it like that, and, they're receiving information in a passive way, what's the difference with when you get children to be working hands-on, to collaborate, what authentic motivation looks like, and why do you think it's important?
Where do I begin? And again, I think you can begin in a lot of different places. I think one of the main things to ask anybody is why they want to do anything, or I think it's cognitively speaking, it's probably better at high school age, where you can really kind of engage in a kind of existential question like that, like, especially when they're thinking about their careers, what's going to happen after high school, etc. You're saying, why do you want to do anything? Why do you get up in the morning? Why do you come here? Why do you? And it's really like a shock, like, and they have to think about it. And same thing with adults. You can really kind of stop somebody in their tracks and say, what is motivating you? And strangely, when you kind of really get in on it, they could be like, well, my dog, like, I really love my dog, and I love to see my dog in the morning. I mean, it can be that simple, or it could also be something that's, I would call, externally validating. Like, oh, well, my dad wants me to do this, or I want to make my parents proud. And then you go, okay, like, that's interesting. What about you? What would make you? What would make you proud? And then all of a sudden, there's a kind of like, whoa, well, and then you say, well, what are you interested in? And I think that's part of our PEP. That PEP was developed from these kind of questions I used to do in high school English. That's what I would literally be making my students write essays about. What do they want to do? What are and then it becomes about goals, right? So it's like, well, what do you want to do? Okay, well, you want to do that? Well, what are your goals? And then, okay, what are the obstacles? Because sometimes the obstacles will be things that are external, but a lot of the admitted obstacles will be like, well, I'm lazy. And just to say it, just to write it, just to come out with it is interesting, because then they have a measure on that. Like, well, how lazy am I? And I don't even have to go into it. We don't even have to go there. It's just that they've stated it. It's a little bit like in a check-in, when you state how you feel. It's not so important why. Like, that's when I do check-ins with people, I just say, give me 2 emotions you're feeling, so that you kind of get it out. And now, okay, now that's gone. Like, so let's get into what we're doing. So I believe that there's just a lot of opportunity to ask, and just to pull out of it, almost like Socratically, like, okay, so what are you doing? And keep pulling on the string, and ultimately what I'm doing is I'm pulling on the string at the beginning, but I really want them to take over. And then, so they're pulling their own string and go, okay, this is really what I want to do. And then they go along, right? I'm just trying to be an activator and kind of share different methods to connect with their authentic self, and to realize, okay, this is external validation. Like, this is the government needs me to take this driving test, or I need to take the scuba test. I want to go scuba dive. I want to drive a car. Okay, so I need to go do that. They need the external validation, but something like what's going to make me happy, or what's going to make me satisfied. Satisfied is probably a better word. What's going to make me satisfied or proud or okay with myself? It's because I pursue something that I like, right? And it might be something really complex, which is exciting, because that means I'm if I can identify, I want to do that really complex thing, I can start to outline all my goals and all the obstacles in the way. And so all of a sudden, it can be super intellectual and super academic, but inwardly, I've emotionally sorted out, what I'm doing. And so this is kind of what I feel project-based learning and social emotional learning can do for somebody to find authentic motivation.
I love that. And it's demonstrated that, yeah, if you're authentically motivated, as you were saying, it's interesting that you were talking about external motivators, because when you do it because it's something that, there is that curiosity, you want to learn more, or you want to do it, that you're able to set your own goals, if you set your own goals, I feel you have that fire within that is going to allow you to keep on going, to keep on trying, and therefore that's how you build that growth mindset of, I'm just going to try, doesn't matter if I fail, I can keep on going, I'm just going to try different things and see what works. And then if we allow children or young people to set their own goals, I mean, that's incredible, because it's so much responsibility, right? But they're learning so much because it's their choice. It's their voice. They're trying to choose what to do. And then that equips them with self-efficacy, which again is something that unfortunately, when you are told all the time what to do, you're just studying for, a particular test to take, then, there is no self-efficacy. You don't have to try out or find out how to solve a problem. You're just trying to repeat things and hope for the best result. And there is not that much fulfillment, because I was talking actually to a teacher, and she was telling me how she was just giving out results, and this particular student had a really high mark, and he was very disappointed because he didn't have the highest mark, and so she was having to have this conversation, just saying it's a really good mark, you really try hard, but he just couldn't, he wasn't happy because it was the highest mark. So it's also, if you set your own goals, then you learn, right, what you can achieve, and it's so important. It keeps you motivated and fulfilled.
That's such a good point, and that's the other reason why self-assessment. And this is kind of to bring the full circle to the idea of using project-based learning and social emotional learning, whether it's again, multiverse games or your own project or projects with other people or enterprise or whatever it is. When you are able to talk about, and we use simple idea of like what well and better if, or what feels good or feels better if, however you want to say it, or the main idea is just to get students to say things like, when I was building this birdhouse, and I was using manual technique. I was reasoning out how to do it. It was going really well, but then I got really frustrated because I was collaborating with my partner, and honestly, I wasn't really listening what they wanted, and I didn't compromise, and I didn't empathize, and then I got super frustrated, and I threw the thing down, and my self-management was awful, and I had a terrible attitude. And you go, wow, because the difference of you saying that about your own experience versus me telling you about your experience is totally different. So then when that person, and especially this is like, I'm talking about middle schoolers, right? So that when that person goes to high school, and even if they want to become, some really difficult or high intellectual, high academic profession, their attitude and their understanding of like what it takes to do these things and how to even talk about themselves, you're not going to hear something about like, why didn't I get the highest mark? It's going to be, I didn't get the highest mark because of these things about myself, right? And I want to get better, or, hey, it's okay, I didn't get the highest mark. It doesn't matter. My goal is here. I'm going for it, and it's okay. I think that taking responsibility for, and that's what we're trying to help develop, is that kind of self-assessment level of things, so that we're there to confirm things and say, you know what, actually, I think that you handled yourself better than you thought, or I think you're giving yourself a little bit too much credit for that. I think the mentor, and that's why we call them mentors instead of teachers, is there to kind of gauge with them, but after the person's done their own sharing, and also that the mentor themselves is going to be uh, what's the word? Well, transparent, but also vulnerable. That's the word I'm looking for. To be vulnerable themselves and say, hey, I got triggered, and when I was telling you guys about this, that I raised my voice, and I don't like that happened in me, but that happened, so I can have a better attitude when everybody's getting things out at the same time, and anyway, it's through modeling, right? Like modeling how you're running a project. If you're running a middle school, you're running a project. If you're running any class, you're running a kind of project. So being vulnerable and sharing with your students or your learners how that's going is a big part of it, so that they can see, oh, right, okay, normally this person obviously has it together, but sometimes they have moments of fragility, or sometimes things get the best of them. So it's really important to be human.
Absolutely. Human being, human centered, and allowing each child to flourish as a human is so important. Now, sort of how you talk about teachers as mentors, because I think that's something so lacking, and I love that role, because if you're a young person and there is someone there out for you, who's going to support you, but as you said, it's going to be transparent, and is someone who can facilitate when you need it, not just someone who's sort of like delivering. Because when you have that hierarchy, sometimes you just feel like you're just riding that, but you don't feel you belong there. It doesn't feel relevant anymore. You don't feel trusted. However, if you have someone who is a mentor, of course you're going to go to that person whenever you need more support, and you're going to feel free to brainstorm or just bounce ideas back. Whereas sometimes depends on the spaces, but some schools might feel more like an institution where you don't really know how many questions you can ask, or or how much support you can be given. So I love that concept of a teacher being more of a mentor, someone who's going to be there to facilitate, but also role modeling and being vulnerable, something they might not know, something. So let's find out together, and I love that, because then it teaches you again to be resourceful and to touch on that human connection, which sometimes we are losing a little bit, I think. And also, my goodness, with all your journey, the gaming, the plays, the playing keeps coming up as well. So I would love to hear a little bit more about what this teacher gamer is. And you even wrote a book, the Teacher Gamer Handbook. So I would love to know, where that, you obviously went back to the beginning when you were working with these children and you use some of the games, but then obviously you even taught at the Green School in Bali. So I just wonder how all these experiences, then you came back to the gaming, and why did you even write a book?
That's the book.
That's the book. Amazing.
Yeah, it's a full manual. It's 300 pages. It's got all sorts of pictures, diagrams, explanations. It's how to bring using role-playing games into the classroom, whether it's through kinesthetics, academics, makerspace, and social emotional learning. It's all been there. It's the beginning. It's the first book. There's other ones coming, but this is kind of the basic one that lays out 36 life skills, which, as I was doing it, as I was teaching and introducing role-playing games originally in Montreal in Canada, and then in Bali in Indonesia, and then now abroad, I was doing it really intuitively, because I was, just thinking, how do I make learning opportunities out of teaching this game? And it's about creating character. A lot of the industry of playing Dungeons and Dragons is getting you started and up and playing right away. And when we're in school, we slow it down. We take the opportunity. We really build out opportunities to learn. And so what I do, like a 10-hour character build, with students. And the idea behind it is that you get to know your character so well that when you go in game, it's called, or when you go into the story, you already know your character so well. Instead of going in barely knowing your character and then jumping into the world and everything is so strange and foreign, you get to kind of play a little bit with the world building. Then when you go into the game and into the story, you're not caught up asking a billion questions, because you get to ask the questions as you're building the character, and then it builds the suspense of like, whoa, what is this story that I'm part of? And then when you see all the different players come together into the story and you guide that, it's really a simulation. It's a simulation of going on an adventure. It's all very visual in your mind. We do things on paper. We use dice. The dice is a great thing because it's random, and the dice mean, because it's random, you're going to roll poorly and you're going to roll well. You're going to roll terribly and you're going to roll epically. So you have this kind of range when you go to perform a skill or whatever it is in the game, but the dice rule. And that's the other thing too about creating the character, is that you roll everything from your height and your weight to different kinds of like how much budget you start with. These things are all random, and as you roll them at the beginning, you're accepting what the rolls are, so that when you get to things that are more consequential in the story, you're accepting the roles. If you just are given a character and you go to play the game and the first roll you make is bad, it's devastating. But if you already acclimate to like, oh, there's good times, bad times. Oh, that was a nice roll. Oh, ooh, okay. You're going to have to sort of deal with that. And you start to deal with it, and you start to realize it's a metaphor of life. The kids don't realize it right away. Adults realize it pretty fast, but it becomes a metaphor. We're like, oh yeah, well, so life sort of happens like that. You have good days, you have bad days, you have things that you think like, I should have done so well, but I did poorly. How did that happen? And the same thing happens in the game. It's a roll of the dice. It's supposed to be easy for you, but for whatever reason, you roll the dice really low and it didn't go right, and you have to deal with it as a player about your character. So it's one step removed from you. And this is the power of the role play, is that you get to fail, and you fail a lot, but then you get to reflect on, life kind of isn't always great. And no matter what your background is, no matter what your privilege, no matter who you are, you go through existential difficulties, you go through traumas, you experience things that you're not ready for. That's pretty much what I think trauma is. And you have to sort through it. And then when you're able to experience this through a character that you're playing, and there of course are plays in theater where we can see, okay, I'm reading this play of Romeo and Juliet, and I know that it's tragic, and I can see what Romeo and Juliet are going through and what everybody's going through. But I've seen it before, and I'm playing it out, versus I'm playing a role-playing game, I'm playing a character, and I don't know what's going to happen. And when it happens to me, my character, it's personal. It's like, it's intense, right? But it's my character. And so there's this really amazing, what I call a golden moment between what's happening with the character and what's happening with the player. And that's also happening in the room with everybody. And just watching somebody else go through failure, and also watching somebody else go through success, and then sharing in the success. Because I'll end with this idea, is that it's a collaborative game. You're in a collaborative story. You're building the story together. So you are up against the challenge of the story together. And that's the key to role-playing games, and especially role-playing games in schools, is that you are in a project, but it's a simulation. It's fantastic. But the only way it works is that everybody's involved, everybody contributes to it. And by the way, they love to contribute to it, whether it's to create a costume or wear a thing or whatever they do. It's about the collaborative win. And that is ultimately what especially if you're doing project-based learning, you want to get people into the collaborative win. You want to get them to see that what each one of them is doing is contributing to a higher level. And when something goes wrong, how you come in and support that person in real life and in the game. And so then that's where the metaphor and reality come together.
I love that. It's really powerful to be able to have that safety. because it's
Yes.
not yourself who is experiencing everything, but because you go so deeply into your character, there's still this safety, but you are experiencing what's happening, dealing with uncertainty. That's something that we are never prepared for, right? And our brain has a really hard time whenever there is uncertainty. You know, your amygdala just goes on alert, and it's for some children can be so difficult to deal with things that they are not ready for. So I love that. It's such a good way, definitely, to learn. But I also am thinking when children are young, when we're talking about early childhood, we use role play so much, right? We use stories so they can really try to understand, develop that empathy, really understanding, what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. You have children, we actually welcome, we encourage children dressing up as superheroes, as a firewoman, as a doctor, right? Any role can go on. And we always encourage that. We love role playing so they can have different roles. And it's interesting that why that stops all of a sudden, why all of a sudden
Right.
children cannot dress up and try and be someone else, why they cannot continue to role play so they have that safety, but they can explore all those feelings and collaborate and manage and face uncertainty. So within a safe space. So yeah, I love that. It's such an interesting perspective.
Thank you. Well, yeah, it's. I mean, people continue it in cosplay and things like that. We see it on the fringes, and it's an opportunity to kind of invite people into it and invite people to again. It's that social emotional learning place. Where else are you doing it in school? You can do it through projects, but the thing is that if you offer a diverse games project or pathway, or you offer role-playing games in school, even for 2 hours a week, it's like it's enough that where all of a sudden it's like, oh, they just can't wait for it, and they talk about it. What was happening in the last time, what are we going to do next time, and all of a sudden the energy through the entire week, it bubbles in a completely different way than when you don't have an opportunity for that kind of play, where you really you're in control, but the dice are also something that really
Control.
create challenge and suspense, because you have to deal with the result. And I think that's the trigger. I mean, to go back to what you said about Guy Claxton, and also Noam Chomsky with this idea of universal grammar. I believe that there's a universal kind of play that's inside of us that likes that suspense and connects with that suspense and connects with play, right? That's how we learn. That's part of how we learn. And I just like universal grammar, I feel like it's a hardwired thing. And so all you have to do is keep asking people, do you want to play a game? And the answer is yes. And very few people are going to be like, no, I don't want to play a game. Like, I mean, and if you really went in on them, it'd probably be because they're worried, they're afraid about their future or something, like, I don't have time for games. But that's something that they've taken on. That's not something that was naturally there, right? I mean, our need to survive is not the same as cave people days, right? Like, our need to survive is much different, and giving the kids the space and letting them have that opportunity is really what this is about. It's just giving them, and like I said, even if you give them 2 hours a week, it's transformative on so many levels.
I love that, because you're not talking about competing, or you're not talking in the sense of competing with other subjects. Like if you were talking about a more formal environment, it's not going to take over any of the core subjects. It's just sort of like a complement. Exactly, it's an entry point. Just spend some times in the week, and you're building all the incredible life and personal skills that they need later on in life.
Yeah, and you're pulling, I mean, it's multiverse, right? So you're pulling, like, you can pull science. So you can be like, okay, check out this scientific thing, or history. Like, yeah, it was like when this happened. And also, it's like from this story. And then, like, let's go outside and let's put ourselves, in a certain, area and really determine, like, how far are you away and what's really going on and what would this look like? And, how, if you put on a backpack that's 40 pounds and you try to run and jump across a river, like, what are the chances that you will pull that off, and how long would it take? So there's all this curiosity, and it's just about the teacher gamer to say, okay, let's bring it to life. Let's also get up from the table and reenact it. Like, okay, let's take what we just did for the last 2 weeks and let's reenact it in a little 5-minute play, and just and they all see it from their different, oh, and then you did this, and then I did that, and then we go, and then and they kind of like arrange it, and they go, and it's all play. It's all play. It's all metaphor. It's all cathartic. It's all social emotional, and it's part of processing. Really, it's about the process, and it's about processing that, and that's what we want, is just to get kids who are adult ready, who just feel like confident. That's really the
Yeah.
key here, is like developing the confidence.
I love that, confident and capable.